Imagine a stone monument taller than a 20-story building, carved from a single mountain and weighing more than 30,000 tons. A monument so enormous that, if completed, it would have surpassed every other stone structure ever attempted before the modern age. It was never finished. Today, its 3 massive sections still stand in the same Chinese quarry where they were carved more than 600 years ago, as if the workers had simply walked away. Mainstream history has a straightforward explanation. The stones became too large to move. That answer is probably correct, but it leaves behind a far more interesting question. Why would one of history's greatest engineering civilizations begin carving a monument they may never have had any realistic way to transport? Tonight, we're investigating the largest abandoned stone project in human history. 20 kilometers east of Nanjing, in a low range of hills called Yangshan, 3 shapes rise out of the quarry floor that do not look like natural outcrops. They look like exactly what they are: enormous slabs of stone, cut on every visible face, left standing at the exact angle and in the exact position where the carving stopped. The first piece is the base, a rectangular slab measuring roughly 30 meters long, 13 meters wide, and 10 meters thick, still attached to the surrounding bedrock along one edge. The second is the body, a single shaft of stone stretching nearly 50 meters in length. The third is the capstone, a curved cap-shaped block over 10 meters long, carved with the beginnings of decorative relief work still visible on its surface after 600 years of weather. Local record, and later scholarly research, connects all 3 pieces to a single project. A memorial stele commissioned in the early 1400s under the Yongle Emperor, intended to honor his father, the founding emperor of the Ming dynasty. If completed and assembled, the finished monument would have towered somewhere around 73 meters high, several times taller than the largest stele ever actually erected anywhere in Chinese history, and by most calculations, several times heavier than any single monolith ever successfully transported by any pre-industrial civilization on record. The number is worth sitting with. The heaviest stone confirmed to have been moved any real distance in the ancient world, the Alexander Column granite blocks, the Baalbek trilithons, the largest sarsens at Stonehenge, all sit somewhere between a few dozen and a few hundred tons. The stone of the pregnant woman at Baalbek, one of the largest single quarried blocks ever cut anywhere on Earth and never moved from its quarry, is estimated at around 1,000 tons. The Yangshan base alone, on its own, outweighs it by a factor of 16. The mainstream explanation for why this project was abandoned is not mysterious at all, and it deserves to be stated plainly and given full credit, because it is very likely correct. The stone was simply too large to move by any method available to a 15th century civilization, however advanced. The Ming engineers, according to this account, either realized the scale of the problem partway through carving, or completed the carving as an act of imperial ambition and ceremonial commitment before the impracticality became undeniable, and the project was quietly shelved. That is a coherent, well-supported, unremarkable answer. And it still leaves the more interesting question completely untouched. Why would anyone start? This is the detail that mainstream retellings tend to move past quickly, because it does not fit neatly into a story about hubris or failure. The Ming dynasty, at the exact moment this quarry was active, was not a struggling or naive state fumbling its way through an engineering problem it did not understand. This was the same imperial administration that, within a decade of this quarry falling silent, launched the treasure fleets of Admiral Zhang He, a series of state-sponsored maritime expeditions involving ships some estimates place at well over 100 meters in length, crewed by tens of thousands of sailors, reaching as far as the eastern coast of Africa. This was a government capable of coordinating logistics across an empire of tens of millions of people, maintaining a civil service selected by rigorous written examination, and executing engineering projects, canals, granaries, city walls, on a scale unmatched anywhere else in the world at that time. It is worth asking, honestly, whether a state with that level of demonstrated logistical sophistication would commit years of skilled labor and enormous resources to carving a 16,000-ton slab of stone without first running the numbers on whether it could ever be moved. Stone carving of this scale was not fast. Estimates of the labor involved in shaping even the smaller of the 3 pieces, based on comparable Ming-era quarrying records, run into the tens of thousands of workdays. This was not a whim. The standard historical account offers 2 possible resolutions, and both deserve to be heard fully. The first is that the project was symbolic from the very beginning, an act of filial devotion carried out for its own sake regardless of whether the final monument would ever be assembled, in the same spirit as other Ming-era projects undertaken more for demonstrated devotion than practical outcome. The second is more mundane, that early Ming engineers may genuinely have believed the stone could be moved using techniques that had worked at smaller scales, sledges over ice-lubricated tracks, canals dug specifically for transport, methods documented elsewhere in Chinese engineering history, and only discovered the scale problem once the pieces were already too far along to abandon without finishing the carving. Both explanations are plausible. Neither has ever been confirmed by a surviving Ming document that explicitly states why the project was cancelled. The imperial record for this specific decision, unusually for a bureaucracy that documented almost everything else about Yongl's reign in exhaustive detail, is silent. Local tradition in the region around Nanjing has long held that the intended transport method involved building a road of packed ice in winter, then sliding the enormous stones toward the Yangtze River using timber rollers and thousands of laborers pulling in coordinated teams, a technique with documented precedent in Chinese history for moving large architectural stones shorter distances. The technique itself is real and well attested elsewhere. Ice road sledging was used to move stones for the Forbidden City in Beijing roughly a century after Yangshan was abandoned, and detailed records survive describing wells dug along the route specifically to provide water for the ice, along with the scale of the labor force required. For the largest of those Forbidden City stones, a block weighing an estimated 300 tons, historical accounts describe a workforce of thousands of men and dozens of days of continuous effort for a journey of roughly 50 kilometers. Scale that method up to the Yangshan base, at more than 50 times the weight of the largest confirmed ice-sledged stone in Chinese history. And the labor requirement does not simply multiply, it likely compounds, because larger loads exert disproportionately greater pressure per unit area, requiring thicker ice, wider tracks, and exponentially more coordinated pulling teams working in perfect unison to avoid the load fracturing under its own weight or breaking through the ice entirely. No historical document has ever been found describing an actual attempt to move any of the three Yangshan pieces. No abandoned ice road, no sunken barge, no partial transport route analogous to the ramps and sledge marks documented at other ancient megalithic quarries around the world, has been identified anywhere between the quarry and the river. This is the detail that separates Yangshan from the Andean or Egyptian sites where we can trace at least a partial transport attempt. Here, the silence is total. Either the transport attempt left no trace whatsoever, which is possible given how much has changed in the landscape over 6 centuries, or it was never attempted at all, and the abandonment decision was made before a single meter of the stones was ever moved from where they were cut. If the second possibility is correct, it raises a stranger question than the mainstream account usually allows for. It would mean that the entire multi-year carving effort, the tens of thousands of worker days, the imperial resources committed, were spent on pieces that their own engineers may have suspected from very early on could never actually reach their destination, and the carving continued anyway. Yangshan is not alone in this. Almost every major stoneworking tradition in the ancient and pre-modern world eventually produced at least one monument that appears to have exceeded the practical limits of its own transport technology, cut and then abandoned in place. At Baalbek in Lebanon, the stone of the pregnant woman at roughly 1,000 tons still sits in its quarry, fully cut and never moved, alongside a second, even larger block discovered still partially embedded in the bedrock in 2014, estimated at close to 1,650 tons. At Aswan in Egypt, the unfinished obelisk, intended to be the largest single piece of stone ever raised in ancient Egypt at an estimated 1,200 tons, still lies in its quarry bed, abandoned after a crack appeared during the final stages of carving. At Thunderstone in Russia, an 1,500-ton granite boulder was successfully moved to St. Petersburg in the 1770s for the base of a monument to Peter the Great, but only after purpose-built machinery, custom bronze rollers, and roughly 9 months of continuous effort by over 400 men, an operation so unprecedented it was documented in detail specifically because contemporaries understood how close it came to failing. What Yangshan adds to this pattern is scale that dwarfs all of them combined. The Yangshan base, at an estimated 16,000 tons, is roughly 10 times heavier than the Thunderstone, the single largest stone pre-modern engineers are confirmed to have actually transported any real distance using purpose-built equipment. If the Yangshan steel had ever been successfully moved and assembled, it would represent, by a wide margin, the single greatest stone transport achievement in pre-industrial human history, exceeding every other confirmed example by an order of magnitude. The mainstream position treats this simply as evidence that Ming engineers overreached and were forced to abandon the project once the scale became apparent. an explanation consistent with the broader global pattern of ambitious quarrying projects that occasionally outran their own transport capacity. That is a reasonable reading, and it fits the evidence better than any competing explanation. What it does not fully resolve is why, across every one of these examples worldwide, from Lebanon to Egypt to China, the abandoned stone is so often the largest single piece its civilization ever attempted, rather than a more modest failure along an ordinary progression of increasingly ambitious but still achievable projects. Civilizations capable of moving 300-ton stones with practiced routine, as the Ming clearly were, do not typically jump straight to a 16,000-ton attempt without some intermediate step. That missing intermediate step, at Yangshan specifically, has never been located. Look closely at the capstone, the smallest of the three pieces, and the surface still carries the beginnings of dragon and cloud relief carving, the decorative motifs expected on an imperial steel of this importance, cut with a precision and consistency that shows no sign of rushed or careless work. Whoever carved this stone was working with full confidence and full imperial resources behind them, taking the time to execute fine decorative detail on a piece that, if the abandonment decision had already been made, would never be seen by anyone. This detail matters more than it first appears to. If Ming engineers had already recognized partway through the project that the stones could never be moved, the rational response would have been to halt carving immediately and redirect the labor elsewhere. Instead, decorative work continued to a level of finish that suggests the carvers, at minimum, believed completion and eventual transport remained the plan for a significant portion of the project's timeline. Tool marks across all three pieces are consistent with standard Ming-era quarrying technique. Iron wedges driven into pre-drilled holes along the stone's natural grain, a technique well documented at other Ming quarries and requiring no exotic or unexplained methodology. There is no mystery in how the stone was cut. The mystery, such as it is, sits entirely in the decision-making that allowed the cutting to reach this scale before anyone apparently called a halt. Comparisons are sometimes made between the precision of Yangshan stonework and the famous masonry of Peru and Bolivia, but the evidence does not support a direct connection. Yangshan's tool marks match known Ming quarrying techniques using iron wedges, while the Andean sites were built using different stones, different methods, and in a completely different historical context. What they do share is something broader: extraordinary ambition, remarkable craftsmanship, and projects that continue to raise questions centuries later. Ming administrative record-keeping, across nearly every other aspect of Yongl's reign, was extensive. Detailed logs survive documenting court expenditures, construction timelines for the Forbidden City, and the provisioning of Zheng He's treasure fleets down to individual cargo manifests. Against that standard, the near-total absence of a surviving official explanation specifically addressing why the Yangshan stele was abandoned stands out as unusual. Some later Ming and Qing-era scholars offered retrospective explanations, generally some version of the practical impossibility argument that remains the standard account today. But these accounts were written well after the fact, by scholars working from local tradition and physical observation of the abandoned quarry rather than from any surviving primary decision document from Yongl's own court. This does not mean the practical impossibility explanation is wrong. It is almost certainly correct in substance. It does mean that the specific moment of decision, who made the call, when, and what alternative options were considered before the project was shelved, is missing from the historical record in a way that is genuinely uncharacteristic of Ming bureaucratic documentation elsewhere. It is possible the relevant records simply did not survive the centuries, lost to fire, war, or ordinary archival attrition, the fate of countless other Ming documents. It is also possible that a project this closely tied to the emperor's personal devotion to his father was deliberately left undocumented at the moment of its failure, an embarrassment quietly allowed to fade rather than formally recorded and filed alongside the empire's other, more successful achievements. The evidence points to one conclusion. The mystery was never how these stones were carved. It was why one of history's greatest engineering civilizations committed itself to a monument it may never have been able to move. Maybe Yongl's engineers misjudged the challenge. Maybe they understood the risks and carried on anyway. We'll probably never know. 6 centuries later, the largest quarried stone in human history is still waiting in the same quarry where the carving stopped. So what do you think happened at Yangshan? Let us know in the comments.